Bismillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, we're very happy to have again another one of our Facebook Live lessons with the scholars of South Ilahi. We are continuing again with our scholar Imam Talut Dawood on Knowing the Path to Allah by Shaykh Ibn Arabi al-Saih al-Tijani. So it's based on the book based on the book called Bughyatul Mustafid. And alhamdulillah, we're very happy to have Imam again to continue. Today's topic is on the excellence of good listening and some of what it comprises of etiquettes that causes one to arrive through the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the path of understanding and perfect benefit. Inshallah, if you have any questions, do send your questions to +65 8776 7706. Imam Talut Dawood is a student of knowledge from the United States who has studied Arabic and the religion for over 10 years. He specializes in Arabic translation and Hanafi fiqh. He currently resides in Mexico, where he has taught and served as Imam for the last 6 years. And finally, he is a murid and an authorized muqaddam of Sheikh Muhammad Al-Mahi Sise. And with that, Bismillah, we'd like to invite Imam to begin his dars. Tafadal, Imam. Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقداره العظيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا من فضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Okay, so we're going to continue, inshallah. We have had some time off between some rest that I needed to take and also some special events that with South Ilahi. We had some time off, but last time we were here, we finished up the fourth topic, which is on the etiquettes of companionship and brotherhood. And we're going to continue today with make a start on the fifth topic, which is on the excellence of good listening and some of what it comprises of etiquettes that cause one to arrive through the grace of Allah to the seat to the path of understanding and perfect benefit. And so this topic here is on the etiquettes of learning and the different modes of learning. And so there are etiquettes that come with your Shaykh al-Ta'lim, which is the Shaykh of instruction. And then there's etiquettes that come with your Shaykh al-Tarabiyah when you are learning from them. And so we're going to start on that, inshallah. 1 second. And so the Shaykh al-Arabi bin Saih, he starts out, he says, you should know that this topic is among the most precious of the topics on the path of the people of Allah, exalted is He, and as well as one of the greatest of them in benefit and the highest of them in honor. That is because good listening, as it is said, is the foundation of all good and felicity and the climbing staircase towards obtaining every objective and benefit. Then it is most appropriate to place it before every means and objective, and it is most benefiting that to it one should entrust all his hopes and objectives. The demonstration of this, by way of summary, in the realm of realization, is that which the Imams of guidance have mentioned, that the existence of the path of felicity and the distinction between it and the path of perdition were only revealed through the speech of Allah and the listening of the creation. They were only revealed through the speech of Allah and the listening of the creation. Some said there are only two, speaking and listening. Or you may say a speaker and a listener. Nothing else exists. Ali, close the door. Cierra la puerta. If it were not for this, nothing else exists. If it were not for speech, we would not know the real blessed is he, what the real blessed is he desired of us. And if it were not for listening, we would not receive what he has said to us. Thus, the first thing that we learned from the real is that he speaks and we listen. And he, blessed is he, in his wise book has mentioned listening before hearing and before seeing. He, exalted as he has said, he is hearing, knowing, and hearing, seeing. Understand well. It is for this important matter that we have placed this topic among the topics of this foreword, preceding the main topic of this volume. Thus we say, depending upon the assistance of the possessor of all might and power, seeking the grace of the only source of blessings and generosity. The knower of Allah, exalted is he, Abu Hafs as-Suhrawardi, may Allah be pleased with him, said, and so we're gonna, before we go into the quote, so what he has put here, alhamdulillah, is a demonstration that Allah prefers that the creation listen before they speak. And so this is where you get the quote of Sufyan ibn Uyayna below, where he talks about the order of knowledge, or the correct way to seek and disseminate knowledge. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, many times he says, Sami'un Alim, or Sami'un Basir. He is hearing and knowing, or he is hearing and seeing. And so Sufyan ibn Uyayna said, knowledge begins with listening. It continues with understanding, memorization, and acting upon it, and finally spreading it. And so the first part of knowledge is listening. Is to hear it from someone else. And this implies instruction. So we have, our religion is not a do-it-yourself religion. One second, there's a train. So our religion is not a do-it-yourself religion. It is a religion of instruction and being instructed, of receiving knowledge from the giver of knowledge, and then putting that knowledge into action. And so Shaykh Mahi Sisi, he always says that Islam is not for lazy people. So you're either, you can't be, you're either a seeker of knowledge, or someone who gives knowledge, or someone who is acting upon the knowledge that he has. And if you're not any of those three, then you're wasting time, and we seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from wasting time and from wasting any of his blessings. I mean, so he continues, it is evident through his listening, understand, one second. Okay, it is evident through his listening, understanding after listening, that what he meant, through his putting understanding after listening, that what he meant was excellent listening. That is because understanding is not obtained through simple listening. It is only obtained through excellent listening. Understand well. And it has been said, about the words of Allah, exalted is He. Do not hasten with the recitation of the Quran before its revelation is completed to you, which comes in Taha, verse 114. And His words, move not your tongue with it to hasten with recitation of the Quran, which comes in Surah Al-Qiyamah, verse number 16. That in these two verses, Allah, exalted is He, instructs His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam to listen well. And some people have said, learn to listen well before you learn to speak. And so there's a lot of stuff here. So basically, the basic premise of this section is that one must first learn and understand, and after learning and understanding, he may teach. And one learns through listening excellently. So then, guys, the Shaykh Ibn Al-Arabi bin Saih, he continues. Excellent listening is accomplished through having perfect etiquette while listening. Yusuf bin al-Hussein said, through etiquette, one understands knowledge. Through knowledge, one can act. Through action, one obtains wisdom. Through wisdom, abstinence begins. Through abstinence, you will abandon the world. By abandoning the world, one begins to hope for the hereafter. And by hope for the hereafter, one obtains the mercy of Allah, exalted is He. And so, all of these quotes, they return back to the fact that the beginning of the path and the beginning of all good is with excellent listening. It is known from His words, through etiquette one understands knowledge, that excellent listening is obtained through perfect etiquette outwardly and inwardly. As for perfect etiquette inwardly, it is making one's intention sincere in his objective to listen, and by purifying the container through repentance and seeking forgiveness, and by realization of one's neediness for Allah, exalted is He, taking flight to Him and asking Him with a destitute tongue to teach him that which he had not known. And so the Shaykh is saying that you have to observe perfect etiquette outwardly and inwardly. And, this seeking forgiveness, I know, I've heard from some scholars that they make tawbah before every lesson, that they make tawbah before every lesson. And I've heard from others that they try to every day make an attempt to make tawbah every day at night after everything is done. Then they try to recount all of their deeds and make tawbah for the deeds that were not pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this matches with our understanding that tawbah is the first of the stations of Islam and the first of the stations of the path. And so that is making tawbah often will purify our hearts and make it capable of understanding the knowledge, first of all, with containing the knowledge and also understanding the knowledge. If we don't make tawbah often, we don't do istighfar, if we don't seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through our knowledge, then our knowledge will not stay in our heart. And if our knowledge does not stay in our heart, then our knowledge, if it does stay in our heart, it will be a curse for us. And if it does not stay in our heart, then it will be a burden for us on the day of judgment because we did not put it through to proper use. And so one, should first make tawbah, and ask Allah's forgiveness, and then ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach him. And then you should, you should proceed to listening. to listening and gaining knowledge from through instruction. And then he continues. He says, from perfect inward etiquette arises perfect outward etiquette. According to the people of realization among the people of the path, thus from perfect inward etiquette, which we have just described, arises reverence, dignity, and the humility and tranquility of the limbs, being free from distractions and other types of beautiful inward etiquette. And so you'll find this in the books of the Sufis that, what is on the outward limbs affects what is inward. So if one, many of us, we worry about our sincerity, and we worry about our ability to put all of these things into practice. And here we have an instruction, that there's a saying, in English that you fake it until you make it. You should fake it until you make it. And what that means is that you pretend. You don't pretend, but you try to practice these things even if you cannot do them perfectly. And so, you should, if you cannot have humility inwardly, then you should at least display humility without, trying to call to yourself. If you cannot have tranquility inwardly, then you should at least display tranquility with your body. And if you practice these things, then it will lead to inward tranquility, inward humility, inward dignity, inward reverence, and inward sincerity. So this is common in the books of the Sufis, and that is that we practice on the limbs, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us so that it moves from the limbs to the it moves from the limbs to the heart. And so it has been, he continues, says, it has been narrated that when Shaykh Abu Hafs al-Nisaburi arrived in Iraq, Al-Junayd came to him. He saw the companions of Abu Hafs standing in front of him, obeying his every command without exception. So he said to him, "O Abu Hafs, you have disciplined your companions like the kings disciplined theirs." Abu Hafs replied, "No, O Abu Qasim. However, excellent outward etiquette is part of excellent inward etiquette." And so this is what I just described, is that, when people display outward etiquette, then it has an effect on the heart. As long as they are not trying to show off, and as long as they're not trying to be seen for it. We need to go down a little bit, inshallah. So he continues, he says, evidence for what the Shaykh said is in the hadith: if the heart is humble, all the limbs are humble. Thus, you should understand that excellent listening is only possible after perfect preparation for that, according to the station and state of the one listening. But according to the people of this affair, this applies primarily to the listening to the speech of Allah, exalted is He, and the speech of the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, both of whose benefits are unending and their marvels, despite the passing of ages, inexhaustible. However, the scholarly Imams, may Allah be pleased with them, have included with listening to the immense Quran and noble Hadith, reading for the sake of informing oneself, the books that comprise the high knowledge, amazing lights, and sublime secrets that have been extracted from them both. And so, the most of the scholars, the scholars of outward knowledge or exterior knowledge, they have restricted this listening. They say that listening that only applies to when you are listening to the Quran or listening to hadith, and otherwise you're just reading, or you're surveying, or you're looking over. But our sheikhs of the path, they have said that it applies to the knowledge of the path also when you're reading, because many of these Sufi books, um, they have the hal of the author, and many of them they are connected to the spirituality of the author. And if you're reading their books, then you are listening to their speech, and sometimes you may even hear, or uh, without even intentionally doing it, you may imagine that the author is speaking to you, and that is because these are living books that were written by living hearts. And so this is one of the karamat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to his awliya. And so listening applies to that also. And so he gives a proof of that. He gives a proof that about why it can only be achieved after preparation. He says, from that which indicates that excellent listening can only be achieved after preparation are his words, blessed and exalted is he. If Allah had known any good in them, he would have caused them to hear. Some have said regarding this verse, if he had known them to be worthy of listening, he would have opened their ears to listening. But if someone is dominated by the demonic suggestions and defeated by the speech of his ego, he will not be capable of listening. This is also indicated his words exalted is he. Verily therein is indeed a reminder for him who has a heart or gives ear while he is heedful. So the preparation for listening is, like we said, is to purify your heart and to at least display perfect etiquette outwardly if you are not able to display perfect etiquette with the hearts. And so he continues, he says, this is also indicated by his words, verily therein is indeed a reminder for him who has a heart or gives ear to while he is heedful. And he says, Al-Fakhr al-Razi said about the explanation of this verse, it means a heart with the attribute of attentiveness, and attentive heart. It is said that Fulan has wealth with the meaning of a lot of wealth. And so Sidi Al-Fakhri al-Razi, Fakhruddin al-Razi, who's the author of one of the most brilliant commentaries on the Quran, he equates the heart mentioned in this verse with an attentive heart, and then he gives the proof that when you say, if I were to say, for example, Abu Sufyan has, he's wealthy, I don't mean that he just has a little bit of wealth. I mean he has a lot of wealth. Or if I say, that Fulan, if I say that Zaid has courage, I don't mean that he just has a little bit of courage. I mean that he's very courageous. And so by this, he has interpreted the heart in the Quran to mean an attentive heart, which means that the person's heart is alive. So the use of the indefinite case indicates having the stated description in a complete manner. So that's what Razi says. This explanation contains an indication of what we have mentioned regarding preparation. The author of Al-Wadif al-Ma'arif said, Yahya ibn Mu'adh al-Razi said, there are two kinds of hearts. The first is a heart that has been filled with the preoccupation for this world to such an extent that if a matter pertaining to obedience presents itself, he would not know what to do. The second is a heart that has been filled with preoccupation for the hereafter, to such an extent that if a matter pertaining to the world were to present itself to him, he would not know what to do. This second heart that he mentioned is the one that has been prepared to know noble sciences and understand astounding secrets. Some have said regarding the verse mentioned above, it means for the one who has a heart free from personal interests and illnesses. Okay, so what is City al-Arabi bin Saih trying to teach us here? He's trying to teach us that, you know, if we want to benefit from this knowledge, and if we want to benefit from the contents, the main contents of this book, then we need to prepare our hearts to receive the knowledge of it. And how do we do that? By purifying our heart, by displaying etiquette. One of the things that we can do is that we don't come to this lecture, or we don't listen to this lecture without wudu. That we don't, if we're reading this book, that we never touch it, and we don't open it without wudu. One of the my madhab is Hanafi, so I'll just mention according to the Hanafis, it's recommended even for books of fiqh and furu', books that deal with not secondary issues, but deal with verdicts and secondary issues, then it is recommended to have wudu for that. And so if that is the case, what about the books that are teaching us about Allah? What about the books that are teaching us about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What about the books that are teaching us about the awliya and their path? And so having wudu, when we're listening to this lecture, having wudu, when we're picking up the books to read them, this is part of having good etiquette outwardly. Preparing our heart also means that we seek Allah's forgiveness often. And if we can, then we seek Allah's forgiveness before this lecture or before reading the book. These are things that we need to do in order to really benefit from the knowledge that is in this book, because it's an amazing book that summarizes the knowledge of the Muhammadan paths, and specifically of the path of Shaykh Al-Tijani radiallahu anhu. But we will not fully benefit without preparing our heart. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to assist us in that. So Ibn Sam'un said about this verse, it means for the one who has a tranquil heart that knows the etiquette of service. The etiquettes of the heart are three things. If the heart tastes the sweetness of worship, it will be freed from the chains of desires. And whoever is raised above his desires has found 1/3 of etiquette. And if he displays neediness for that etiquette that he lacks, after having been preoccupied with what he had found, he will have found 2/3 of etiquette. The third etiquette is the filling of the heart with the one who initiated with grace as a generosity from himself. So what does this mean? So if the heart tastes the sweetness of worship, it will be freed from the chains of desires. And so if you're freed from the chains of desires, you have found 1/3 of etiquette. And I don't know, besides our shuyukh, I don't know anyone who can be described as that. We need to work on this. And so how do you taste the sweetness of worship? By doing what you are able, and there are many etiquettes to that, but some of the main etiquettes that will help you taste the sweetness of worship is having tawajjuh, having certain orientations and certain orientations, certain concentrations when you are doing your dhikr. So for example, when you're doing Salat al-Nabi, blessings on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you have in mind the verse that deals with sending blessings on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you have in mind, Inna Allahu wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. And then you picture that Allah is giving you that command directly, and then you are by doing Salat al-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, blessings on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are responding to that command. So this is part of the etiquettes of worship that will help you to develop the sweetness of worship. Another thing that will help you is to be consistently on time with what you do. So unfortunately, our modern world, it is difficult to structure our lives around dhikr. But the people who are successful, they structure their lives around their dhikr. And so they never miss, if they do their weird every morning at 6 a.m., they never miss it at 6 a.m. And then if they do it, at 5 a.m., they never miss it at 5 p.m., then they never miss it at 5 p.m. So being on time and being in the place where Allah expects you at the time He expects you and doing the act that He expects is part of these etiquettes that lead to the sweetness of worship. Another thing that leads to the sweetness of worship is having proper respect for the dhikr. So there, among the conditions of dhikr and among the conditions that we receive when whatever tariqah we're in, that we receive with our awrad, with the things that the sheikhs give us to do, among those conditions, there are minimum conditions, and then there are conditions for perfection. And so a person who is striving to get that sweetness of worship, a person who is striving for the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the countenance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a person who is striving for the presence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he will do what is he will try to perform as many of the conditions for perfection as he can. He will not be satisfied with the minimum conditions unless there is a pressing need. For example, you woke up, Fajr comes in at 6, but today you woke up at 6:30, and you have to be to work at 7:30, and so you cut short, but that's a pressing need. Other than that, when you don't have a need, and the normal situation should be seeking to do everything perfectly. And so these are some things that will help us to obtain the sweetness of worship. We trying to do all of the conditions perfectly, doing all of the conditions of perfection, having tawajjuh, and what we are and the reason for doing the dhikr, and that we're responding to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and other tawajjuhat, and other concentrations that we can have, such as picturing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, picturing things that remind us of Allah, or things that remind us of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are all things that are tawajjuhat. And then you also have trying to be on time, and having a regular schedule for all your dhikr, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always finds you in the place that He expects you at the time that He expects you, and doing the act that He expects. And so these are things that can help you gain the sweetness of worship, so that we can be freed from the chains of our desires, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us. So then he says that if you are raised above his desires, you were raised above your desires, you will have obtained 1/3 of worship. And if you display neediness for what you don't have of etiquette, then you will have found 2/3 of etiquette. So it's to not be satisfied with the portion of etiquette that you have. You must desire to perfect your etiquette, and desiring to perfect your etiquette is the second third of etiquette. And the third etiquette is filling the heart with the one who initiated with grace as a generosity from him. And that is to have the heart with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times. And what that is, something that is a grace from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not something that is from the actions of the servant. And we're just gonna finish up these two paragraphs, inshallah, because I think it's 10:40. So Muhammad ibn Ali at-Tirmidhi, may Allah exalted as he have mercy on him, said, "The death of the heart is due to the desires of the soul. Every time he rejects one of his desires, he obtains life in proportion to it. The living hear and the dead do not. He exalted as he said, you cannot make the dead hear." And so what is this saying? He's saying that, in order to prepare the heart for listening and for hearing, then you need to reject your desires. And rejecting your desires will give it life. And it is the living heart that hears, and the dead hearts do not hear. And so he goes to summarize this. He says the axis of all these statements is obtaining perfect preparation for listening, just as has been previously indicated. Thus, when the slave obtains preparation for listening and inculcates the attribute of life, which causes it to be worthy in the eyes of Allah for listening, it will hear the speech of Allah exalted as he, and the speech of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as well as that which has been derived from them both, with a true listening. And it will achieve in the most perfect states of emulation in all of its dealings, just as Allah exalted as he has said, "Those who hear a word and follow it most excellently, they are those whom Allah has guided, and they are those who are possessed of intellect." And that's Surah Az-Zumar, verse number 18. And he says, some have said, in this noble verse, there is an explicit praise of those who have the attribute of excellent listening, from which arises excellent emulation, that they are those who Allah has guided, and that they are those who are possessed of intellect. This should suffice as an honor for those whom Allah exalted as he has made worthy of this immense degree and exhausted special quality. And so we're going to turn it back over to Sidi Abu Sufyan, inshallah, and we're going to see if we have any questions.
Assalamualaikum, Imam.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah, Imam, thank you for your class. Alhamdulillah. I think we've managed to cover quite a bit today, alhamdulillah. The first question for today, inshallah, Imam, I think is with regards specifically to mentioning about the importance of how as you fight your desires, you are more receptive to Allah. How as you clean your heart, you can be a better listener to Allah's command and follow Allah's command and leave his prohibition. Imam, could you perhaps share with us some of the advice on how how one can actually inculcate this into the life? Like is how's having good company, does that affect you? What are some of the practical things that one can do in order to inculcate an environment where you're always cleaning your heart and being more receptive to Allah?
Okay, so in creating an environment or inculcating an environment it's a help, but it can also become a crutch because the paths today, the murid has to work, and he has to have a life, and this by nature will throw you into precarious positions where you're loyal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and your rejection of your desires will be tested. And so creating those environments is good, but at the same time we have to be careful of insulating ourselves, because if we insulate ourselves, then we open ourselves up to be tested. But the main thing is to fight your nafs. If a thought occurs to you and you know that Allah does not like it, then you have to fight your nafs, and try to do the opposite. The shuyukh, the earlier shuyukh, they would do things that were subhanallah, they seem like extreme. So if he had a strong desire, for example, for chicken, then he would fill his belly with grass, because it has no taste. And so they would do things like this to oppose their nafs. But the sunnah, what we have from the sunnah, and the Muhammadan path, they returned everything to the sunnah. Is is what we have from that is the Hajj Prayer, and fasting. And so the Tahajjud prayer, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it illuminates the heart, and it controls desires. And the fasting is a shield. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said as-sawmu junnatun. So the sawm is a junnah, is a shield. It protects you, and it also diminishes the desires. So many of us we don't take to this advice, but we need it. Fasting is very important for doing that. Also, reading the Quran, for many people, if you occupy yourself, with Quran for a certain amount of time, then it will help you to stay away from that which is haram. And in general, just trying to fight your nafs when you have certain desires.
Thank you, Imam, for the very beautiful, concise answer. Something a lot of us are facing, and we want to inculcate that kind of environment. And your main advice to hit the point home is not to insulate yourself in such a comfortable environment, but to keep on striving and fight your nafs. Thank you, Imam. The next question, the person is asking, with reference to tasting the sweetness of worship, will everyone be able to taste the sweetness of worship? And if they do, is there a time when they will hit a plateau? If they do hit a plateau, how do they fight this?
So it's called a taste. It's not, tastes aren't permanent. So if you taste the sweetness of worship, then that will help you, and when you, I guess, have tests or trials, or, when you have a blockage, then, that sweetness that you tasted will help you to push along. So not everybody will taste the sweetness of worship. That's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for people that do certain things, but when you can taste the sweetness of worship, then it will change the way that you look at the world, and it will change the way that you look at worship. So, I mean, I this is something that we should seek, but it shouldn't be sought to a point where we feel that if we haven't tasted the sweetness of worship, that we are doing something wrong. Because as I said, it's a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's not something that you can control. So if you haven't tasted it yet, it's not so, don't feel that you're doing something wrong. Just keep going and try to do some of the things that I told, I listed out, and inshallah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessing, we may all taste the sweetness of worship.
Thank you, Imam. Inshallah, Imam, the next question will be last question for this session. With reference to listening, speaking, and spreading knowledge, Imam, how will we know when we are ready to spread knowledge, even in conversations?
So that's a question that has a lot of different aspects. So the first aspect is that we all have to spread knowledge based upon the instruction of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he was present, convey to he who is not present, because he may convey, many a conveyor of knowledge conveys the knowledge to someone who understands it more than himself. So this is all of us have the obligation to convey knowledge that we have, but the caveat is that you have to be sure that it's knowledge that you understand, first, and secondly, you don't spread what you're not capable of spreading. So there's some knowledge, that Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, he kept till he was on his deathbed. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told Mu'adh that whoever says La ilaha illallah with sincerity will enter paradise. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him that, and he said, shall we not inform people? And he said no, because then they would just depend on that and they wouldn't act, but they wouldn't work, do works. And so Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, for fear of giving that to someone who would misunderstand it, he never wanted to convey that knowledge. However, on his deathbed, he conveyed it for fear of, having some knowledge that should be conveyed and not conveyed. And so we have to be cognizant of what is beneficial knowledge. And, for the majority of us, today, what we need for our prayers, what we need for avoiding the haram, what we need, for remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's beneficial knowledge. And a lot of the other, knowledge that is beyond this, it actually is a harm for many people, because we start to think that we know more than we know. And so, we have to be sure that it's knowledge that we understand. We have to be sure that it's knowledge that's beneficial. And, and beyond that, if it's actually specialized knowledge, for example, giving rulings or explaining, complicated rulings and things like this, then yeah, you should have the authorization of your teachers. No one should teach Aqidah, for example, without the authorization of his teachers, because Aqidah is a very touchy subject, and you can if you don't explain it properly, then you can lead people astray. So it all depends on what the knowledge is, if it's beneficial, if you can convey it, and if it's specialized knowledge, then you should seek the authorization of your teachers first.
Thank you, Imam, for clarifying on the importance of seeking knowledge through teachers, and also on whether we are authorized in that sense to spread certain kind of stuff.
So one of the things that we have to, with the rise of certain currents within Islam, with the self-taught type of streams of Islam, there is, there was I guess a response from the more traditional folk, which was to focus on ijazas and authorizations and things like this. And it put fear in people, and rightfully so, for not being authorized. But at the same time, it has also kind of overcorrected to the point where we don't want to convey anything without, an ijaza or formal ijaza. If you're giving a class, for example, Riyadul Salihin, the first thing people will say, are you going to give ijaza for this class? And for me, and this has happened to me before, when someone comes to my class and that's the first thing they ask, or that's, we started in the class and on the first day somebody asked that, I just closed the class, not going to give it, because this is, we become focused on this paper, and not on the understanding. There are plenty of people who don't have ijaza, who understand Riyadus Salihin and can help people understand it. So we have to, yes, there has to be some kind of control, so that people know who is trustworthy to take knowledge from. But at the same time, we don't want to overcorrect to the point where people who are capable of delivering a little bit of knowledge don't do it, out of fear. So I hope that's clear.
MashaAllah. Thank you, Imam, for that. MashaAllah. May Allah bless you and your family. Could you bless us with a closing dua, Imam, to end the class?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. قل هو الله احد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا احد اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق بالحق بالحق والهادي الى صراطك المستقيم وعلى اله حق قدره المقدار العظيم. Oh Allah, we ask you to grant us, hearts that are worthy of listening, and then to grant us true, good listening and excellent listening, and to benefit us by that which we listen to and by that which we retain, and to allow us to benefit others by that which we understand. And we ask you, Allah, to grant us, perfect etiquette on the path, and to grant us that which will give us perfect etiquette on the path. And we ask you to keep us on the path that leads to you until we meet you and your Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam on the day of judgment. وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you so much, Imam. May Allah bless you and your family, inshallah.
آمين وإياكم. آمين آمين.
Yeah,
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Alhamdulillah, thank you everyone for joining us for yet another class on the book Burhatul Mustafid by Shaykh Ibn Arabi al-Saih, taught by Imam Talut Dawood. And it is a recurring class, so do check out our social media so you can find out when's the next class. And with that, before we end, we'd like to again share with everyone that we are having the online The Sacred Path of Love 2020. The theme this year is God is with us in tribulation. And this event will be conducted online via Zoom. The tickets are running. So, inshallah, if you do not want to be disappointed, do go and get your tickets very, very soon. And also recently there was a sale, but currently just check out social media for any other announcements on the Sacred Path of Love. The scholars that are available are listed in the poster. You can go to the link soutilahi.eventbrite.sg. That's soutilahi.eventbrite.sg, eventbrite.sg. And with that, thank you so much for your support. Please pray for our scholars, Imam Talut, all of our scholars, and our directors, Sidi Khalid, Sayyida Ainun, and of course, pray for our volunteers. May Allah bless all of them. And with that, thank you so much. Forgive us for any shortcoming. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.